this is how I do my eyebrows. So I like to brush my brows through first to have a visual of where I truly need to put the brow product to fill in the sparse areas and make sure that everything looks good. I tend to start with this brow just because it's fuller, I think, and then it can act as a guide for the other brow, and this is just much easier to work with. So I find that I prefer to start with this and then go in on the other brow. I am first just running it through the arch and a bit down here, just to make sure I have the definition I want. Now notice that I'm doing very fine feather-like strokes. I'm really not putting on much, just because I prefer a softer look and because this brow pencil is a bit dark, so it could start looking weird really fast on me because I'm really very fair skinned. Then I like to start working my way down the tail of the brow and with my finger clean up any places where maybe I missed or any places where I feel like I overdid it. And if it's too, maybe I did a little bit too much, I like to brush the brows through a little bit. It just softens the look. Then I go down the tail and just make a thin little line. I feel like I have some sparse areas here that I don't really enjoy. So I'm just filling those in. And then I will start working my way down here where I have a sparse area. And then fill in the very front of the brow. And that's where I do the very lightest little strokes because I really don't like that look of very harsh brows or kind of boxy brows. It looks very unnatural and it's really not very flattering in my opinion, especially not on someone like me, but yeah. So I'm mimicking little hairs. So I'm doing little small strokes with the pencil and barely touching the brow. Also notice how I'm not going in like this. This is a nightmare. It's much easier to go in almost flat from the side and then make this little hair-like strokes. If you do it like this, it's very easy to place too much weight on the tip and then you're gonna draw really much thicker, much more intense lines. That's the last thing that we want, so that's why I'm doing it like that. So I'm going in almost from the side. Gives me much greater control, and I'm holding the pen from the very end because then it's also easier to do it in a more controlled and more gentle way. So that is basically my brow done. It's not perfect, but it's to the point where I feel satisfied enough to start the other brow, and then later I will go in and, you know, work with the little details. I'm basically gonna do the same over here. This brow is a little bit trickier, not just because I'm left-handed and I have to like go around like this. I can't do it with the other hand, but it's also trickier because it's a little bit different from the other brow and it's a lot more sparse, especially in this area. It's just shaped a little bit differently. It's not that your brows have to be twins. They do have to be sisters though. This one is the problem child of the two. I have to be a bit more careful with this one. It's also thinner, as you can see. I have to pluck it a little bit more because the brow hairs grow in a bit of a weird way. And yeah, I just have to pluck some hairs, and of course they don't grow out of the right places, so I have to deal with that brow being a bit thinner. Like, it naturally is thinner as well, but the brow hairs grow in a really weird way over here. Now, I did touch the skin a little bit with the brow pencil. I'm just removing that and making sure that I don't remove something from the very tail. Now you can see it's a little bit intense, okay? Don't be scared by that. It's a little bit too intense, but it's fine as long as it's not really dramatic. I'm going in here, slowly making my way closer to the front of the brow, and notice how I really shift how I'm holding the pen in comparison to where the brow is. Like, the closer I am to the front, the more I go in, couldn't you say laterally, but the more I go in from the side rather than straight on, if that makes sense. Over here I'm fine with doing that a little bit because I prefer more definition in the arch and in the tail, but in here I want it to be as soft as possible. I'm going from the root up, also to mimic those hair-like strokes. You can see I went a little bit too hard, so I'm brushing it out. This removes a little bit of the product, almost blending it, and then I'm going back in. I'm barely even touching the skin, barely touching it, and it still draws a little line. Notice how I did that way too hard. So that is the first draft of my brows. They are not done because I can see that they look a little bit too different. This eyebrow is also a bit more harsh, like the color is a bit more intense, meaning there's more product here. So I'm just brushing it through, and now I want to see if I can mimic the arch a little bit more. So I'm thickening up this area here to make it match more to this brow. So I think this is as far as I will go. It really is those small little strokes that make the whole difference. But as you might be able to tell, these brows are a little bit too harsh and too intense for me because, well, for many reasons, but some of the reasons are that I have very soft coloring and I'm very pale, so colors just look more intense on me and everything starts to look very unnatural, very fast on me. Like, the lighter you are and the less contrast you have, and especially if you have both combined, like the less makeup you can take, the less dramatic colors you can handle as well. Colors will very easily overtake you and overpower you. My little trick is to take the blotting powder from Fenty and a brush and to almost aggressively pack the powder onto the brush So now this brush has a lot of blotting powder on, and I'm just going to like press it up against the eyebrows, making sure that I'm not moving anything around, only depositing the powder. I'm not moving anything around. I'm just depositing, adding there, and not removing the base. Does it make sense? If I want a little bit more, I'll turn the brush around and go in a second time around. If I have really overdone it, I will be a little bit more aggressive with the brush, but really I'm barely touching. If I do this motion, I'm barely touching the brow. Do you see that difference that it makes? Not only does it remove the shine from the brow hairs, but it really softens up the brow. It just looks a lot more subtle. Like, can you tell the difference? It's quite insane if you ask me. So you see how this brush is just full of powder. Just going to press that in. And I start here at the front of the brow because that's where I need it to be the softest. So again, not moving anything around, only depositing. And you can see how the front of the brow really is soaking up that powder. Okay, now I'm just gonna start brushing it upwards. What happened here? As you can tell, even though I'm being very careful not to move anything around, we did lose a little bit of thickness on this tail here. So it's not unusual that I will go back in with my pencil and just draw some strokes again. I'm not gonna go back in with powder because there's already powder there. That is how you make them look like sisters. And they look a lot more natural on my face now. The last part is to make sure that the brow hairs don't move around. I'm taking my eyebrow mascara. I have found that this really helps to make the brow hairs not move around. I'm cleaning up the brush a little bit. Even though it's a small brush, there's a lot of product on it. Found out that I should not go into the very front of the brow as the first thing, because guess what? That's where all the product gets stuck. So I'm just brushing through everything else. It's okay to move the brow hairs around because really what I'm doing is just depositing some of that brow mascara. Now you can use a gel. In fact, that's what most people use and what most people will recommend you. But I just have unruly brows sometimes and I just don't want them to move. So that's why I have been experimenting a little bit and found that this eyebrow mascara really does that for me. You can also use eyebrow wax. Again, not starting at the complete front of the brow. Rather, like, you see how shiny it got? Because it's depositing a lot of product. Now with these hairs, these are even more unruly in the tail than on the other brows. So with these ones, I try to move them around less. But if I move them a little bit too much, then they're not gonna go back to the position that I want them to be in. Then when there's not so much of that brow mascara left, I go into the very front And then I just angle the brow hairs in the way that I find flattering and that I find looks best. And then just trying to make them match a little bit. Not twins, but sisters. That is how I do my brows. This one is annoying me today.